Imagine a place where the earth itself holds stories. High on the bluffs, overlooking the Mississippi River, in the quiet, rolling hills of northeastern Iowa, lies a landscape unlike any other. As the morning mist gently rises from the valley floor, revealing the lush green carpet of the prairie, you might sense a profound stillness, a whisper from the ancient past. Here, beneath the grass and wildflowers, lie shapes, not just random hills or natural formations, but the distinct outlines of animals. Great bears, soaring birds, winding serpents, and graceful turtles. These are the effigy mounds, sacred earthworks sculpted from the land itself over 1,000 years ago. An effigy mound is exactly what its name suggests. A mound of earth, shaped to represent a living being, while burial mounds exist in many parts of the world. What makes these so unique, so special to this region of North America, is their symbolic form. They weren't just tombs, they were powerful statements, ceremonial spaces, and celestial calendars carved into the very fabric of the prairie. The people who built them, a culture we now call the effigy mound builders, left no written language, no grand stone cities. Instead, their legacy is written upon the land, a sprawling, silent gallery of earthen art that connects the sky, the earth, and the spiritual world. As we stand here, surrounded by these gentle giants, we're standing in a sacred space. Each mound is a testament to a deep understanding of the natural world and a rich spiritual life. Why did they build them? What did these animal forms represent? The bear, a symbol of strength and transformation. The bird, a messenger between worlds. These weren't just random choices. They were carefully selected symbols, placed with intention in a specific alignment, often with astronomical significance. Some mounds contain burials, linking ancestors to these powerful animal spirits, while others seem to be purely ceremonial. Think about the sheer effort involved, using simple tools, digging sticks, clamshells, and baskets woven from hide or bark. These early people moved tons of earth, basket by basket, to meticulously craft these monumental sculptures. This was a community effort, a shared vision passed down through generations. It speaks to a society that was deeply connected, not only to each other but to the cosmos and the land they called home. The mounds are often found in clusters, creating complexes that would have been active centers for gatherings, rituals, and trade for hundreds of years. Unlike the pyramids of Egypt or the temples of Central America, the effigy mounds don't shout their presence. They whisper. They ask you to slow down, to walk the land, to observe the subtle curves and lines. They blend so seamlessly into the landscape that for centuries, many were overlooked, mistaken for natural features. This quiet integration is part of their magic. They are not separate from nature. They are a part of it, a collaboration between human hands and the earth itself. The area we now know as Effigy Mounds National Monument protects over 200 of these incredible structures, one of the largest and most well-preserved collections anywhere in the world. But this is just a fraction of what once existed. Across Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, and Illinois, thousands of these mounds once dotted the landscape. Many have been lost to farming and development, making the ones that remain all the more precious. They are fragile survivors, delicate echoes of a lost world. Walking among them is a humbling experience. You begin to notice the details. The powerful arch of a bear's back, the elegant spread of a bird's wings, the gentle curve of a linear mound that connects one group to another. You can feel the intention behind their placement, often on the highest points of the bluffs, offering breathtaking views of the river valley below. It's easy to imagine ancient peoples gathering here, looking out at the same river, under the same sun and stars, feeling a profound connection to their creation and their creators. The stories these mounds tell are not of kings and conquests, but of clans and kinship, of a spiritual relationship with the animal world, and a reverence for the cycles of life and death. The animal effigies may have represented the identity of different clans or families, marking their ancestral territory. The bear clan, the bird clan, each with its own distinct responsibilities and spiritual connections. The mounds served as a physical manifestation of their social structure and their place in the universe. As we explore this sacred ground, it's important to remember that this is not just an archaeological site. For the descendants of the mound, builders to Ho-Chunk, the Iowa tribe of Kansas and Nebraska, and many other affiliated tribes, this is a living cultural landscape. It is a place of ancestry, a place of prayer, a place where the spirits of their forefathers still reside. The mounds are not just relics of the past, they are an active, vital part of their heritage today. They come here to honor their ancestors, to connect with their traditions, and to ensure that these whispers from the prairie are never forgotten. So, what is an effigy mound? It's a sculpture, a cemetery, a map, a temple, and a storybook written in soil. It is a key yet powerful reminder of a sophisticated culture that flourished in the heartland of America long before European arrival. They challenge us to look at the landscape not just as scenery, but as a repository of human history, spirit, and art. They invite us to listen closely, to hear the whisper of the past carried on the prairie wind. In the chapters to come, we will delve deeper into the mysteries of these mounds. We'll explore the different animal forms and what they might have meant. We'll look at the astronomical alignments and how these people mapped the heavens on Earth. And we'll meet the modern descendants of the mound builders and learn what these sacred sites mean to them today. For now, let's just take a moment to appreciate the quiet majesty of this place, where the earth speaks and the stories of 1,000 years lie sleeping just beneath our feet. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Be sure to subscribe so you do not miss the next chapter in our exploration of the Effigy Mounds. Before the cities, before the roads, before even the first farmers tilled the soil, this land was locked in an epic struggle between ice and rock. Welcome to the world as it was, a landscape being born from the frozen grip of the Great Ice Age. Today, we journey back tens of thousands of years to understand the very foundation of this continent, the geological stage upon which human history would eventually unfold. To picture this world, you have to erase everything you know. Forget the familiar forests, the winding rivers, the rolling hills. Instead, imagine a sheet of ice, a glacier of unimaginable scale, 2 miles thick in some places, stretching from the Arctic all the way down, covering much of North America. The weight of this ice was colossal, a pressure so immense it literally depressed the Earth's crust. It was a slow-moving, silent giant, but its power was absolute. For millennia, this was the dominant force, a sculptor of continents. Then, around 20,000 years ago, a great change began. The Earth's climate started to warm, slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. The colossal ice sheet, which had seemed eternal, began to yield. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic flood, but a long, drawn-out retreat. A process that would take thousands of years. This was the Great Thaw, and it was a messy, chaotic, and incredibly creative period. As the glaciers melted, they unleashed torrents of water. These weren't gentle streams. They were massive, churning meltwater rivers that carved through the landscape with incredible force. Think of a fire hose on a sandcastle, but on a continental scale. This meltwater carried with it a massive load of sediment boulders, gravel, sand, and silt, all the rock and earth that the glacier had scraped and ground up on its long journey. This process created the dramatic landforms we can still see today. The glaciers acted like giant bulldozers, scraping away loose soil and soft rock, exposing the harder, more ancient bedrock beneath. In many areas, they carved deep, U-shaped valleys, a classic signature of glacial erosion, distinct from the V-shaped valleys carved by typical rivers. They left behind massive boulders, called glacial erratics, dropped in seemingly random places, sometimes hundreds of miles from their original location. As the meltwater rivers slowed down, they began to deposit their heavy loads. They created vast outwash plains, flat expanses of sand and gravel. They formed kames, which are irregularly shaped hills of sediment, anescas, long, winding ridges of sand and gravel that were once the beds of rivers flowing within or beneath the ice. These features are like the fingerprints of the retreating glaciers, a geological map of their slow and steady withdrawal. One of the most significant legacies of this era is the soil itself. The glaciers ground down mountains into fine, nutrient-rich powder. This material, known as loess, was picked up by the wind and deposited in thick blankets across the landscape, especially in the great river valleys. This is the soil that would one day become the breadbasket of the continent, an incredibly fertile foundation that was a gift from the ice. In the regions south of the ice sheet's farthest advance, the climate was also transforming. Areas that were once frozen tundra, home to woolly mammoths, mastodons, and giant sloths, began to warm. Spruce and fir forests started to colonize the newly exposed land, followed by pine, and eventually, the broadleaf deciduous forests we are more familiar with today. Oak, hickory, and maple. The ecosystem was in constant flux, a dynamic dance of advancing and retreating species, both plant and animal. The great river valleys, like the Mississippi, the Ohio, and the Missouri, became the superhighos of this new world. Swollen with meltwater, they carried the rich sediment downstream, creating vast fertile floodplains. These valleys were not just channels for water. They were corridors of life. They provided a rich and diverse habitat for plants and animals, and crucially, for the first people to arrive on this newly shaped continent. These Paleo-Indians, the ancestors of all subsequent indigenous societies, entered a world that was still being born. They were skilled hunters, following the herds of large game animals that thrived in the cool, post-glacial environment. They would have witnessed the last remnants of the great ice sheets to the north, felt the chill winds blowing off them, and navigated a landscape dotted with massive proglacial lakes, temporary bodies of water formed by melting ice, dammed by ridges of earth and rock. The land they found was a paradise of resources. The rivers teemed with fish. The forests and grasslands were full of game. The floodplains offered edible plants. The very rocks left behind by the glaciers provided materials for tools. Chert and flint, essential for making spear points and knives, were often concentrated and exposed by glacial action. The environment wasn't just a backdrop. It was an active participant in their lives, shaping their movements, their diet, and their culture. This geological story is not just a dusty chapter in a textbook. It is the fundamental reason why human societies were able to flourish here. The fertile soil, the abundant water, the network of rivers, the rich biodiversity. All of it can be traced back to the epic retreat of the Ice Age glaciers. They carved the limestone ridges, laid down the fertile plains, and directed the flow of the rivers. They set the stage. Without the ice, there would be no rich topsoil in the river valleys. Without the meltwater, the great rivers would not have their modern courses. The landscape would be flatter, less dynamic, and poorer in the resources that sustained life for millennia. The indigenous societies that would later build the great mounds and sophisticate civilizations did so on a foundation, meticulously prepared by ice and water over thousands of years. They understood this land intimately, reading its history in the flow of the rivers and the shape of the hills. So, the next time you look at a rolling landscape, a wide river valley, or even a strangely placed boulder in a field, remember the immense power that shaped it. You're not just looking at land. You're looking at the aftermath of a planetary scale transformation. You're seeing the land before the mounds, a world sculpted by ice, and the perfect cradle for the human story that was just beginning to unfold. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey back in time fascinating, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next chapter, where we'll meet the first people who called this newly formed land their home. See you next time. Welcome back to our journey through the history of the Upper Midwest. In this chapter, we're going all the way back to the very beginning, to meet the first peoples who called this land home. We're talking about a time so distant, it's almost hard to imagine. The great glaciers of the Ice Age were just starting to retreat, leaving behind a landscape that was both harsh and full of new possibilities. Imagine a world carved by ice. As these massive frozen rivers melted, they created a network of lakes, rivers, and wetlands. This was the world the first humans entered, a land teeming with life that we can only dream of today. These pioneering groups are known to archaeologists as Paleo-Indians. They weren't just wandering aimlessly. They were expert hunters, following the herds of colossal Ice Age animals. Think about the sheer scale of this. We're talking about mammoths, with their long, curving tusks, and giant mastodons, browsing on spruce trees. There were also massive ground sloths, giant beavers the size of black bears, and herds of caribou and ancient bison. For the Paleo-Indians, these animals were everything: food, clothing, tools, and shelter. Their entire existence revolved around the hunt. So, how did they hunt these giants? It wasn't with bows and arrows, those hadn't been invented yet. They used long spears tipped with beautifully crafted stone points. We call these Clovis points, named after the site in New Mexico where they were first identified. These points were incredibly sharp and effective, a testament to the skill and intelligence of their makers. A Clovis point was a masterpiece of Stone Age technology, carefully flaked from Hequali's stone like chert or flint to be both lethal and durable. Hunting a mammoth with a spear was incredibly dangerous work. It required teamwork, courage, and a deep understanding of animal behavior. Paleo-Indian hunters would likely have worked in groups, perhaps isolating a younger or weaker animal from the herd. They might have used the natural landscape to their advantage, driving animals into bogs or narrow valleys where they could be more easily dispatched. Every successful hunt was a monumental achievement, providing enough meat to feed a group for weeks. They would have used every part of the animal: the meat for food, the thick hides for clothing and shelter, the bones and tusks for tools, needles, and even art. The lives of these first peoples were nomadic. They moved constantly, following the migratory patterns of the animals they depended on. Their campsites were temporary, small settlements near good hunting grounds or sources of fresh water. Because they were always on the move, they didn't leave behind a lot of stuff. What we find are the remnants of their toolkit: the distinctive spear points, scrapers for cleaning hides, and the stone flakes left over from making their tools. Each of these artifacts is a tiny window into a lost world, a connection to the very first human footsteps in the upper Midwest. But the world doesn't stay the same. As thousands of years passed, the climate continued too warm. The great ice sheets melted away completely, and the environment of the upper Midwest began to change dramatically. The spruce forests that the mastodons loved gave way to pine, and then to the oak and hickory forests we're more familiar with today. This environmental shift had a massive impact on the animals. The giant Ice Age megafauna, like the mammoths and mastodons, couldn't adapt. Their food sources disappeared, and they eventually went extinct. This extinction event marks a major turning point in human history in the region. The people had to adapt, or they, too, would disappear. This period of transition and adaptation ushers in a new cultural era, which archaeologists called the Archaic period. The big-game, hunting lifestyle of the Paleo-Indians was no longer possible. The people of the Archaic period had to learn to live in a new, more diverse world. So what did this new world look like? The dense forests were now home to new types of animals: white-tailed deer, elk, black bears, and turkeys. The rivers and expanding lakes were teeming with fish, turtles, and mussels. The landscape was also full of a wider variety of plants, offering nuts, berries, and edible roots. The archaic peoples became masters of this new environment. They were incredibly resourceful and adaptable generalists, rather than the specialist hunters of the Paleo-Indian era. Their toolkit changed to reflect this new lifestyle. While they still hunted, the spear points became smaller and more varied, designed for hunting deer and other medium-sized game. But we also see a whole new range of tools appear in the archaeological record. They developed groundstone tools, like axes and adzes, which were perfect for woodworking. With these, they could fell trees to build more substantial shelters, or craft dugout canoes to navigate the region's abundant waterways. We also find grinding stones, called manos and matates, which tell us they were processing nuts and seeds for food. This is a huge development. It shows they weren't just relying on meat anymore. They were incorporating a much wider range of plant foods into their diet. They invented new fishing technologies, like nets with stone sinkers and hooks carved from bone. They even began to use copper. The upper Midwest, particularly around Lake Superior, has some of the purest native copper deposits in the world. Archaic peoples were the first to mine this metal, hammering it into tools like awls, knives, and fish. This wasn't smelting. It was cold hammering the raw copper, but it represents the very beginning of metallurgy in North America. This shift towards a more diverse resource base allowed archaic peoples to become a bit more settled. They didn't need to follow migrating herds across vast territories anymore. Instead, they could move seasonally within a smaller, familiar territory. They might spend the summer near a lake or river, fishing and gathering plants. In the fall, they'd move to upland forests to harvest nuts. In the winter, They'd camp in a protected valley to hunt deer. This is what we call a seasonal round. This more settled lifestyle had profound consequences. People started living in larger groups for longer periods. We begin to see the first evidence of cemeteries, suggesting a growing attachment to specific places and a more complex social and spiritual life. They were creating a sense of home, of belonging to a particular landscape. The Archaic period lasted for thousands of years, a long and successful chapter of human adaptation. The people of this era laid the groundwork for everything that was to come. They were the ones who truly learned the rhythms of the upper Midwest, who unlocked the secrets of its forests, rivers, and lakes. So, from the courageous Paleo-Indian hunters facing down mammoths on a frozen tundra, to the resourceful archaic foragers mastering a new, greener world, these first peoples were the true pioneers of the upper Midwest. Their story is one of resilience, of incredible ingenuity, and of a deep, evolving connection to the land. They weren't just surviving. They were thriving, creating a rich and complex human story that had been unfolding for millennia before the first pyramids were built in Egypt. In our next chapter, we'll see how these archaic traditions developed even further, leading to the rise of the woodland cultures, who would introduce pottery, agriculture, and the construction of monumental earthworks to the region. The story is just getting started. Thanks so much for watching. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the history of the upper Midwest, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapter. See you next time. Welcome back to our journey through the ancient history of North America. Last time, we explored the hunter-gatherers of the Archaic period. Today, we're diving into Chapter 4. The rise of the woodland tradition. This era, stretching from roughly 800 BCE to 1200 CE, wasn't just a continuation of the past. It was a revolution in how people lived, worked, and saw their world. The innovations of the woodland period laid the crucial cultural groundwork for the incredible effigy mounds that would later define the landscape. So, let's step back in time and uncover the foundations of this remarkable civilization. One of the most significant leaps forward during the woodland period was the invention of pottery. Before this, people relied on containers made from animal hides, woven baskets, or gourds. Imagine trying to cook soup in a basket. It was possible, using hot rocks, but it was inefficient. The creation of ceramic vessels changed everything. Suddenly, people had durable, fireproof containers. This wasn't just about better cooking. It was a game changer for food storage. They could now store seeds, grains, and dried foods for much longer, protecting them from pests and moisture. This newfound food security was a cornerstone of woodland society, allowing communities to stay in one place for extended periods and plan for the future. The earliest woodland pottery was thick-walled and simple, often decorated by pressing cords or fabrics into the wet clay before firing. These patterns weren't just for show. They tell us stories about different cultural groups and their unique artistic signatures. The simple clay pot is one of the most important artifacts from this era, symbolizing a massive shift towards a more settled, stable way of life. This stability was further fueled by another major development: horticulture. While the woodland peoples were still expert hunters and gatherers, they began to actively cultivate plants. This wasn't full-scale agriculture like we'd see later, but a more managed form of gardening. They focused on what archaeologists call the Eastern Agricultural Complex. This included plants like sunflowers, squash, goosefoot, and marsh elder. These crops provided a reliable, storable source of carbohydrates and oils, supplementing their diet of deer, fish, and wild nuts. The ability to grow their own food, even on a small scale, reduced their dependence on seasonal migrations. It allowed them to establish more permanent villages, fostering a deeper connection to their land. This shift from a purely foraging lifestyle to one that included cultivation marks a profound change in the relationship between humans and their environment. They weren't just taking from nature, they were actively shaping it to meet their needs. This new horticultural knowledge was passed down through generations, becoming a vital part of their cultural identity and survival strategy. With more reliable food sources from pottery and gardening, life itself began to change. People started living in larger, more permanent villages. Instead of small, mobile bands, we see the emergence of settled communities, often located in fertile river valleys. These villages weren't just collections of houses. They were social and ceremonial centers. Archaeological evidence shows clusters of dwellings, storage pits for food, and communal areas for work and ritual. Life became more community-oriented. People had neighbors. They had shared responsibilities and shared traditions. This new social structure required more complex rules and leadership to manage resources and resolve disputes. It was in these villages that a richer ceremonial life began to blossom. The stability of village life gave people the time and security to focus on more than just day-to-day survival. They could invest in their spiritual world, a development that would have monumental consequences. This sense of place, of a permanent home, was a radical departure from the nomadic lifestyle of their ancestors and was essential for the complex societies that would follow. Perhaps the most visually stunning legacy of the Woodland period is the beginning of mound building. While some earlier cultures built small mounds, it was during the Woodland era that this practice truly took hold and became a central part of their ceremonial life. These early mounds were typically conical or dome-shaped and served primarily as burial places. But they were far more than just graves. They were sacred monuments, public declarations of a community's beliefs, and powerful symbols of their connection to their ancestors and the cosmos. Building a mound was a massive communal effort, requiring the cooperation of dozens, if not hundreds, of people over a long period. They would have moved countless baskets of earth, one by one, to create these enduring structures. The act of building the mound was as important as the mound itself, reinforcing social bonds and a shared sense of identity. These mounds often contain elaborate burials of important individuals, sometimes accompanied by exotic grave goods like copper from the Great Lakes, shells from the Gulf of Mexico, or obsidian from the Rocky Mountains. This shows us that extensive trade networks were already in place, connecting distant communities. These conical burial mounds were the first chapter in a long story of mound building in North America. They were the architectural and ideological ancestors of the later, more elaborate effigy mounds. The Woodland people weren't just burying their dead, they were physically shaping their world to reflect their spiritual beliefs, creating a sacred landscape that would be built upon for centuries. So, as we close this chapter, let's recap the profound changes of the Woodland period. The invention of pottery revolutionized cooking and food storage. The adoption of horticulture provided a new layer of food security. These innovations allowed for the growth of permanent villages, fostering complex social and ceremonial life. And finally, the rise of mound building created a new, monumental way to express spiritual beliefs and honor ancestors. Each of these developments was a crucial building block. Together, they formed the rich cultural soil from which the later effigy mound builders would emerge. The Woodland people created a world of stability, community, and deep spiritual meaning, setting the stage for one of ancient North America's most fascinating cultural expressions. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the Woodland tradition. It's a period that truly transformed the human story on this continent. Next time, we'll build on this foundation as we finally enter the world of the effigy mound builders themselves. You won't want to miss it. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next chapter. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Have you ever wondered who built the incredible effigy mounds scattered across the American Midwest? These massive earthworks, shaped like animals, spirits, and even humans, are a breathtaking sight. For a long time, their origins were shrouded in mystery, leading to some pretty wild theories. But today, thanks to decades of careful archaeological work, we have a much clearer picture. In this chapter, we're diving deep into the world of the effigy mound builders. So, who were they? The people who constructed these amazing mounds are most closely associated with what archaeologists call the late Woodland period, which spans from about 700 to 1200 AD. It's important to remember that late Woodland isn't the name of a single tribe. It's an archaeological term used to describe a shared way of life, a cultural pattern that was common across a wide region, primarily in what is now Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, and Illinois. These weren't just random groups of people. They were the direct ancestors of mmany modern native nations that we know today. The Ho-Chunk Nation, for example, has a deep and continuous connection to this land and its history. Their oral traditions and cultural practices hold vital keys to understanding the meaning and purpose behind the mounds. Other nations, like the Dakota and various tribes that now reside in the region, also have ancestral links to these mound-building cultures. It's crucial to recognize that this is not a vanished history. It's the living heritage of sovereign nations. When archaeologists began excavating these sites, they started to piece together the story. They found that effigy mounds are often part of larger mound groups. These groups can include conical mounds, which are simple dome shapes, and linear mounds, which are long and straight. The effigy mounds themselves are the most distinctive, with shapes like bears, birds, water spirits like panthers, and even human figures. The level of artistry and engineering required to build them is truly astounding. Imagine trying to create a perfectly proportioned 200-foot-long bird shape using only baskets of dirt without being able to see it from above. The placement of these mounds wasn't random either. They are often found on high bluffs overlooking rivers and lakes, in locations with significant spiritual and practical importance. Many mound groups seem to be aligned with celestial events, like the solstices, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of astronomy. They were sacred landscapes, places for ceremony, burial, and community gathering. What did daily life look like for the mound builders? Well, they were skilled hunters, fishers, and foragers. They hunted deer, elk, and other game with bows and arrows tipped with small, sharp stone points, often called Madison points. They fished in the abundant rivers and lakes and gathered a wide variety of wild plants, nuts, and berries. While they did practice some horticulture growing crops like squash and sunflowers, they weren't heavily reliant on agriculture in the same way as the Mississippian cultures to the south, who were building huge cities like Cahokia around the same time. Their settlements were typically small villages or hamlets, often located near the mound groups. Archaeologists have found evidence of their homes, fire pits, and storage pits. The artifacts they left behind give us more clues. A key diagnostic artifact of the late Woodland period is a type of pottery called collared ware. These pots have a distinct thickened rim, or collar, around the top, and are often decorated with twisted cord impressions. Finding fragments of this specific pottery style is one of the surest ways archaeologists can identify a late woodland site. Let's talk about the mounds themselves. Why were they built? Many, but not all, of the mounds were used for burials. Excavations have revealed human remains, sometimes placed in a specific part of the effigy, like the heart or head of an animal mound. This suggests a deep spiritual connection between the person buried, the animal spirit represented by the mound, and the surrounding landscape. The mounds were likely markers of kinship and territory, claims to a place made by specific clans or family groups. A bear clan, for instance, might build bear-shaped mounds to signify their connection to that particular area and their ancestral spirit. The shapes themselves are symbolic. Bears were powerful figures, often associated with leadership and healing in many native traditions. Birds, soaring between the earth and the sky, represented the upper world and spiritual connection. Water spirits, like panthers or lizards, were guardians of the underworld and the sources of life, like springs and rivers. Building these effigy mounds was a way of embedding their cosmology, their entire belief system, into the very earth itself. It was a way of making the landscape sacred and meaningful. How do the effigy mound builders fit into the broader picture of ancient North America? They weren't living in a bubble. They were part of a vast network of interaction and exchange. We can see this by comparing their culture to their neighbors. To the south, as mentioned, were the powerful Mississippian cultures, while the effigy mound builders adopted some technologies from them, like the bow and arrow. They largely maintained their own distinct cultural traditions. They didn't build large, flat-topped platform mounds or live in fortified cities like their southern neighbors. They chose a different path, one that was more focused on smaller, kin-based communities, and a deep, symbolic relationship with their specific environment. To the north and east were other woodland groups who also built mounds, though typically not the elaborate effigy shapes. There was a constant flow of ideas, goods, and people throughout the region. For example, exotic materials like shell from the Gulf Coast and copper from the Lake Superior region have been found in effigy mound sites, showing they were connected to long-distance trade networks. The end of the effigy mound tradition around 1200 AD is another fascinating topic. It wasn't a sudden collapse. Instead, it seems to have been a gradual cultural shift. New ideas and new groups of people moved into the region, including the ancestors of the Oneota culture, who were more reliant on agriculture, particularly corn. Lifestyles changed, and the practice of building effigy mounds slowly faded away, replaced by new traditions and new ways of honoring the ancestors and the land. But the mounds remain. They are a powerful, physical link to a rich and complex past. They are cemeteries, sacred sites, and works of art. Understanding who built them means moving beyond old, romanticized myths of a lost race. It means recognizing them as the creations of the ancestors of today's vibrant native nations. It means listening to the voices of the Ho-Chunk, the Dakota, and other tribes whose heritage is written upon this land. The mounds are not just relics of the past. They are part of a continuous, living history. By studying the archaeology, the artifacts, and the deep cultural knowledge preserved by descendant communities, we can begin to appreciate the true legacy of the effigy mound builders. They were sophisticated, artistic, and deeply spiritual people who created one of the most unique and enduring cultural landscapes in North America. Their story is a vital chapter in the continent's history, and it's a story that continues to unfold. Thanks for joining us for this chapter. If you want to learn more, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for our next video. We appreciate you being here. See you next time. Hello and welcome back to our channel. Today, we're journeying back in time, stepping onto sacred ground to explore one of the most fascinating and beautiful mysteries of ancient North America, the effigy mounds. Have you ever wondered why these massive earthworks were shaped into the forms of birds, bears, serpents, and other creatures? It's a question that takes us deep into the heart of indigenous cosmology and spirituality. Let's uncover the secrets held within these earthen shapes. The period between roughly 650 and 1200 AD saw the rise of a unique cultural tradition, now known as the effigy mound builders. Across the landscape of the upper Midwest, primarily in Wisconsin, but also in Iowa, Illinois, and Minnesota, these ancient peoples sculpted the earth into incredible animal and spirit forms. We're not talking about small sculptures. Some of these mounds stretched for hundreds of feet. The famous Serpent Mound in Ohio, for instance, is over 1,300 feet long. These weren't just random shapes. They were deliberate, meaningful constructions that connected the community to the cosmos. So, why animals? To understand this, we have to move beyond a purely Western scientific lens and embrace the worldview of the people who built them. For many indigenous cultures, including the modern descendants of the mound builders like the Ho-Chunk Nation, the line between the physical and spiritual worlds is not a hard barrier. It's a permeable veil. Animals were not just creatures. They were powerful spiritual beings, messengers, and clan ancestors. Each animal effigy likely represented a specific clan or lineage within the community. A bear clan, for example, would see the bear as a sacred ancestor, a being of immense power, strength, and healing. Building a bear-shaped mound was a way to honor that ancestor, to draw upon its spiritual power, and to mark their territory as belonging to the bear clan. It was a physical manifestation of their identity, their lineage, and their connection to the spirit world. The choice of animal was also deeply tied to cosmology. The world was often seen as having multiple layers. There was the world below, the underworld, often associated with water and creatures like serpents, lizards, and panthers. These beings held power over water, the underworld, and transformation. The serpent, in particular, is a powerful figure in many indigenous belief systems, often associated with water, fertility, and the powerful forces of the earth. Building a serpent mound could be an appeal for rain, a way to mediate with the powers of the underworld, or a representation of a creation story. Then there's the world above, the sky world. This realm was home to powerful thunderbirds and other avian beings. Bird effigies, with their wings outstretched, are incredibly common. These weren't just any birds. They were spirits that controlled thunder, lightning, and the rains. Their wingspans could block out the sun. A bird mound often strategically placed on a high bluff overlooking a river valley, would have been a powerful statement. It connected the people on the earth to the powerful beings in the sky. Imagine standing on one of these mounds during a thunderstorm. You would feel as if you were at the very center of cosmic power, a bridge between earth and sky. These mounds were likely sites for important ceremonies related to weather, warfare, and communication with the sky spirits. And what about the animals of the middle world, the world we walk upon? Effigies of bears, deer, and bison represent the powerful spirits of the land. The bear, as we mentioned, is often seen as a guardian and a healer, a being with knowledge of medicines from the earth. Building a bear mound could have been a way to create a place of healing or to establish a protective boundary for the community. These land animal effigies grounded the people, reinforcing their connection to the territory they lived in and the resources it provided. They were a constant, physical reminder of the spiritual pact between humans and the animal nations they shared the world with. Oral histories passed down through generations are crucial to understanding these mounds. While archaeology can tell us the what, when, and where, the oral traditions of descendant communities, like the Ho-Chunk, Iowa, and others, tell us the why. These stories speak of first people, of clan ancestors who were animals, and of the epic deeds of culture heroes who shaped the world. The mounds are illustrations of these sacred stories, written not with ink, but with the earth itself. They are history books, genealogical charts, and cosmological maps, all rolled into one. For example, a story might tell of a great spiritual battle between a thunderbird and a water panther. Seeing effigies of these two beings near each other on the landscape isn't a coincidence. It's a direct reference to that sacred narrative. It marks the place where that cosmic event is believed to have occurred. The placement of the mounds is also key. They're almost always found in specific, significant locations. On high bluffs, overlooking rivers, near springs, or land with celestial events like the solstice or equinox. This wasn't accidental. The builders had a sophisticated understanding of their environment in the sky. An effigy might be oriented to face the sunrise on the summer solstice, linking the animal spirit of the mound with the power of the sun and the changing seasons. This shows that the mounds were part of a complex ceremonial calendar that guided the community's life throughout the year, from planting to harvest, from birth to death. They weren't just static sculptures. They were active parts of a living, breathing, ceremonial landscape. Furthermore, many mounds served as burial places. While not all effigy mounds contain burials, many do, often placed in a spiritually significant location within the animal's form, like the heart or head. This suggests that being buried within the clan effigy was a way to ensure the spirit of the deceased was guided and protected by the clan's ancestral animal spirit on its journey to the spirit world. It was the ultimate act of returning to the earth and reaffirming one's eternal connection to their lineage and the cosmos. The mound became a portal, a sacred space where the worlds of the living, the dead, and the spirits converged. So, when we look at an effigy mound, we're not just seeing a pile of dirt in the shape of an animal. We are seeing a profound expression of a world where spirits walk the earth, where animals are ancestors, and where the earth and sky are bound together in a sacred relationship. These mounds are monuments to a rich, spiritual, and intellectual tradition. They are a testament to the deep connection Indigenous peoples have with the land, a connection that continues to this day. They are libraries of knowledge, places of power, and sacred sites that deserve our utmost respect. Thank you for joining me on this exploration into the shapes of spirits. It is a powerful reminder that there are many ways of seeing and understanding the world around us. What do you think is the most fascinating aspect of the effigy mounds? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more deep dives into the mysteries of the past. Until next time, keep exploring. Welcome back to our journey through the ancient landscapes of North America. In our previous chapters, we've walked among giants and traced the sinuous forms of serpents etched into the earth. Today, we turn our eyes to the sky, to the magnificent bird mounds that watch over these sacred lands. These are not just shapes in the soil. They are the guardians of the sky, powerful symbols of flight, freedom, and the spiritual world. As we venture deeper into this chapter, we we find ourselves standing before effigies of incredible scale and precision. Imagine, if you will, an enormous bird of prey, its wings unfurled, captured in a moment of eternal flight. But this bird isn't soaring through the air. It's sculpted from the very earth beneath our feet. These bird mounds are among the most common and visually stunning creations of the mound-building cultures. They are a testament to an intricate understanding of both the natural world and a complex cosmology that connected the earth to the heavens. Let's start with their sheer size. Some of these earthen birds have wingspans that are truly breathtaking, stretching over hundreds of feet. Picture the eagle effigy mound in Wisconsin, for example. Its wings spread an astonishing 624 feet from tip to tip. To put that into perspective, that's longer than 2 football fields, laid end to end. Standing at ground level, you can't fully comprehend its form. You can walk the length of a wing, tracing its gentle curve. But it's only from a higher vantage point, or through modern aerial imaging, that the full majesty of the creature is revealed. This scale wasn't accidental. It was a statement, a monumental creation meant to be seen not just by people on the ground, but perhaps by the very spirits of the sky they were intended to represent. What's fascinating is the incredible variety among these bird mounds. They aren't just generic bird shapes. Archaeologists and cultural historians have identified specific species, each likely holding its own unique meaning. We see the powerful silhouettes of hawks and eagles, birds of prey renowned for their sharp vision, hunting prowess, and ability to soar to incredible heights. These were likely symbols of strength, leadership, and a connection to the sun and the upper world. An eagle effigy, with its broad wings and commanding presence, might have represented a powerful clan, a war leader, or a guardian spirit protecting the community from harm. Then there are the more graceful forms of waterfowl, like cranes and herons. These birds are different. They are creatures of 2 worlds, at home in the water, on the land, and in the air. A crane mound, with its long, elegant neck and slender body, might symbolize something else entirely. Cranes are associated with migration, with the changing of seasons, and with journeys. Their presence in the earth could have marked important seasonal cycles, guided the spirits of the dead on their journey to the afterlife, or represented a connection to the watery underworld. They are liminal creatures, bridging the gap between different realms, and their effigies likely served a similar spiritual purpose. One of the most intriguing aspects of these bird mounds is their alignment. Many are not placed randomly on the landscape. Instead, they seem to follow a celestial or terrestrial logic. A significant number of bird mounds are oriented with their wings spread wide, aligned perfectly with the flow of a nearby river or the contours of a valley. It's as if they are gliding along the natural arteries of the earth. This alignment suggests a deep connection to the landscape itself. The river valleys were lifelines, providing water, food, and transportation. By aligning the bird effigies with these valleys, the builders may have been invoking the bird's spiritual power to protect and bless these vital resources. The bird wasn't just on the land. It was part of it, its form echoing the very flow of life. This connection between the bird, the river, and the sky creates a powerful triad. The river valley is the path on earth. The bird is the master of the path in the sky, and both are linked in a sacred geography. It's a worldview where every element is interconnected. The spirits of the sky, embodied by the birds, watch over the human world below, their earthen forms serving as a constant, physical reminder of their presence and protection. These mounds weren't just art. They were active spiritual technology. They were places for ceremony, for prayer, for connecting with a cosmos that was alive and conscious. Imagine a ceremony taking place at dawn on the summer solstice. The community gathers around a great eagle mound. As the sun rises, its first rays strike the head of the effigy, illuminating the earthen form. The bird, aligned with the celestial event, seems to come alive, its spiritual power awakened. Rituals performed here would have been amplified, their intentions carried aloft on the wings of this great sky spirit. These mounds were focal points of spiritual energy, places where the veil between the human and spirit worlds was thin. The precision involved in their construction is another marvel. These were societies without modern surveying equipment, yet they created geometrically precise and symmetrical figures on a massive scale. To lay out a wingspan of over 600 feet and maintain its perfect proportions required sophisticated knowledge of geometry and measurement. It likely involved using stakes and ropes, with a team of workers following a master plan meticulously conceived by a spiritual leader or a shaman. The effort was immense, involving the movement of thousands of cubic feet of earth, all carried by hand in baskets. This was a communal act of faith, a shared investment in their spiritual well-being. So, why birds? Across countless cultures worldwide, birds are seen as messengers between the heavens and the earth. Their ability to fly, to transcend the horizontal world of human existence and ascend into the vertical realm of the sky, gives them a unique spiritual status. They can see the world from a perspective we cannot. They are seen as intermediaries, carrying prayers up to the gods and bringing divine knowledge back down to awaiting humanity. The builders of these mounds likely shared this belief. By creating these massive bird effigies, they weren't just honoring these creatures, they were building permanent gateways to the sky world. They were creating conduits for spiritual power, ensuring that the guardians of the sky would forever watch over them. These weren't just generic sky spirits either. The specific choice of a hawk, an eagle, or a crane mattered. Each bird had its own story, its own medicine, its own power. A hawk clan would honor the hawk spirit. A community that relied on the river's bounty might look to the crane for its blessing. These effigies were deeply personal and specific to the clans, and a worldview that animated their lives. They were emblems of identity, markers of territory, and centers of ceremonial life. As we stand here, in the quiet presence of these earthen wings, we are reminded of a time when the sky was not an empty space, but a realm filled with powerful beings. The bird mounds are their earthly anchors, their timeless representatives. They are the guardians who have watched over these valleys for 1,000 years. Their silent flight a testament to a people who understood the profound connection between the land, the sky, and the human spirit. They challenge us to look up, to see the world not just as a physical place, but as a living, breathing, spiritual landscape. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the magnificent bird mounds. In our next chapter, we will delve into the mysteries of the geometric enclosures, a world of perfect circles, squares, and octagons that reveal a stunning mastery of mathematics and astronomy. Make Suraju resubscribed so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching. Welcome back to our journey through the ancient landscapes of North America. Today, we're venturing into Chapter 8, the Bear Mounds, Protectors of the Land. As we've explored this sacred geography, we've encountered incredible effigy mounds shaped like birds, water spirits, and other powerful beings. But among the most common and compelling are the bear mounds. Let's delve into the world of these earthen giants and uncover their profound significance. Across the woodlands of the upper Midwest, particularly in Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota, the landscape is dotted with these remarkable earthworks. From the air, their form is unmistakable. A long, solid body, 4 distinct legs, and a rounded head. Unlike the graceful swooping lines of a bird mound, bear mounds are characterized by their bulk and solidity. They feel grounded, heavy, and immensely powerful. Their rounded forms hugging the contours of the earth. Imagine standing beside one thousands of years ago, shortly after its creation. The sheer scale would have been awe-inspiring. These weren't just piles of dirt. They were carefully sculpted monuments, often hundreds of feet long. The builders would have moved countless baskets of earth, meticulously shaping the form, layer by layer. The rounded, almost gentle curves of the mounds belie the immense labor and dedication required to build them. They are a testament to a community's shared belief and purpose, a physical manifestation of a spiritual concept. So, what did these bear mounds symbolize? For the indigenous cultures that built them, the bear is a figure of immense power and respect. Far from being just another animal, the bear is often seen as a relative, a teacher, and a potent spiritual guide. To understand the mounds, we must first understand the bear's role in the stories and traditions that have been passed down for generations. In many Native American traditions, the bear is a powerful protector. Its strength is legendary, its presence a symbol of courage and authority. A bear mound, placed strategically on a ridge overlooking a river valley or a village site, might have served as a guardian. It was a declaration to all, both in the physical and spiritual realms, that this land was protected. It stood as a sentinel, its earthen form a constant, unwavering presence watching over the community. Its body is literally part of the land, reinforcing its role as a protector of the earth itself. But the bear's power isn't just about physical might. It's also deeply connected to healing and medicine. Bears are known to dig for roots and eat specific plants, and indigenous peoples observe this closely, learning about the medicinal properties of the natural world. The bear became a symbol of healing knowledge, a keeper of the earth's remedies. When a bear hibernates, it goes into the earth, into a womb-like space, only to re-emerge in the spring, reborn. This cycle of retreat, transformation, and renewal is a powerful metaphor for healing both physical and spiritual. A bear mound, then, could have been a place of healing rituals, a focal point for those seeking restoration and balance, drawing on the restorative power of the earth and the spirit of the bear. Furthermore, the bear is often a guide between worlds. In many stories, bears can walk between the human world and the spirit world. They are bridge builders, navigators of the unseen. Their ability to walk on two legs, much like a human, gives them a unique, liminal status. They are kin, yet also otherworldly. Placing a bear mound near a burial site or a ceremonial complex might have been intended to help guide the spirits of the departed on their journey, ensuring they had a powerful and steady companion. The mound itself, situated on the land, but pointing to the sky, embodies this connection between the terrestrial and the celestial, the living and the spirit world. When we look at the distribution of bear mounds, we see patterns emerge. They often appear in groups, sometimes alongside other animal effigies, creating a kind of spiritual map or a celestial story written upon the land. A clan or a kinship group might have identified with the bear as their primary ancestor or totem. Building a bear mound was a way to honor that connection, to reaffirm their identity and their relationship to the creation stories that defined their world. These mounds were not isolated objects. They were part of a living, breathing, cultural landscape, interwoven with ceremony, story, and daily life. Consider the perspective of the people who lived with these mounds. They weren't just ancient relics. They were active participants in their world. A child growing up would see the bear mound every day, hear the stories of the great bear protector, and understand their place within that story. The mound was a constant reminder of the power that protected them, the knowledge that could heal them, and the spiritual guidance that was always available. It was a source of identity, security, and profound spiritual connection. Today, many of these mounds have been lost to agriculture and development, but those that remain are precious links to the past. Sites like Effigy Mounds, National Monument in Iowa, preserve clusters of these incredible earthworks, allowing us to walk among them and feel their ancient presence. When you stand next to a bear mound, you can't help but feel a sense of reverence. You're standing on sacred ground, in a place shaped by a deep understanding of the natural world and the spiritual forces that animate it. The bear mounds are more than just archaeological features. They are enduring symbols of strength, healing, and guardianship. They represent a worldview where humans are not separate from nature, but are deeply intertwined with it, protected by and responsible for the land they inhabit. The bear, in its earthen form, is a powerful teacher, reminding us of the deep wisdom embedded in the landscape and the stories it holds. These rounded, powerful forms are the protectors of the land, their silent watch continuing across the centuries. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of the bear mounds. The stories they tell are a vital part of the continent's history, and it's a privilege to share them. Join us next time as we continue our journey. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Until then, keep exploring. Welcome back to our journey through the ancient landscapes of North America. Today, in Chapter 9, we delve into one of the most enigmatic and awe-inspiring earthworks, the Serpent Mounds. These aren't just piles of dirt. They are profound expressions of belief, cosmology, and a deep connection to the natural world. Specifically, we'll explore their powerful link to the mystical forces of water. So, what exactly are we looking at when we see a serpent mound? Picture this: massive, winding earthen embankments, sometimes stretching for hundreds of feet, slithering across the landscape. Their forms are unmistakable, long, sinuous, and deliberately crafted to mimic the movement of a snake or a serpentine creature. These aren't accidental shapes. They were meticulously planned and constructed by ancient peoples, often on high bluffs overlooking rivers and streams. This placement is our first major clue. The creators of these mounds intentionally built them in conversation with the waterways below. Why a serpent? Across countless cultures worldwide, the serpent is a symbol loaded with meaning. It represents rebirth and transformation, shedding its skin to be born anew. It's a creature that inhabits multiple realms, slithering on the earth, burrowing beneath it, and often being associated with water. This dual nature makes it a perfect symbol for bridging worlds. The world of the living, the world of spirits, and the underworld. In many Native American traditions, the serpent, particularly the horned serpent, is a powerful and often fearsome being associated with the underworld and the immense power of water. This creature wasn't just a simple snake. It was a deity, a spirit of immense strength that commanded rivers, springs, and storms. It could be a bringer of life-giving rain or a source of destructive floods. Building a massive effigy of this being was likely a way to honor, appease, or channel its incredible power. Think of these mounds as more than just art. They were active ritual sites. Imagine ancient ceremonies taking place along the serpent's spine, with the river flowing below as a witness. These rituals might have been to call for rain during a drought, to protect against floods, or to ensure safe passage for travelers on the water. The serpent mound acted as a conduit, a physical prayer to the powerful spirits that governed the very source of life, water. These beings were seen as river guardians, an essential force to be respected. The underworld, far from being a place of evil, was often seen as the source of life and fertility, and the serpent was the key to accessing its power. Now, let's talk about some specific examples in Iowa. While not as famous as its Ohio counterpart, Iowa is home to several important serpent-like mounds, particularly in the Effigy Mounds National Monument. Near the Mississippi River, you can find linear mounds that curve and undulate, strongly suggesting serpentine forms. For instance, the Marching Bear group contains not just bear effigies, but also long winding mounds that seem to flow with the topography of the land, leading towards the water. These Iowa mounds are often more subtle, integrated seamlessly into groups of other animal-shaped effigies. This suggests that the serpent, or water spirit, was part of a larger cosmic family of spirit beings, each with its own role and power. The Iowa serpents feel like part of a community of earthworks, a chapter in a larger story written on the land. Of course, no discussion of serpent mounds is complete without mentioning the most famous one of all, the Great Serpent Mound in Ohio. This colossal earthwork is nearly a quarter of a mile long. It depicts a massive serpent appearing to uncoil and wriggle across a high plateau, its head seeming to swallow an oval shape, which could represent an egg, the sun, or a celestial body. The Ohio Mound is an isolated, dramatic statement. Unlike the Iowa mounds, which are part of a larger complex of effigies, the Great Serpent Mound stands alone in its grandeur, a singular, powerful monument. Its astronomical alignments are also incredibly precise. The head of the serpent aligns with the summer solstice sunset, while the coils may point to the winter solstice sunrise and the equinoxes. This connects the serpent not just to the underworld and water, but to the cosmos itself. It's a calendar, a celestial map, and a spiritual icon all in one. The Ohio serpent is a master of both the watery depths below and the starry sky above. So, how do they compare? The Iowa mounds are like intimate whispers, part of a larger conversation with other animal spirits, deeply tied to the local river valleys. They're about community and the integration of different spiritual forces. The Great Serpent Mound in Ohio, on the other hand, is a shout to the cosmos. It's a grand, universal statement about time, the sun, and the serpent's central role in the universe. Both, however, share that fundamental connection to the serpent as a powerful intermediary, whether it as the guardian of a specific river in Iowa or a cosmic controller of celestial events in Ohio. The serpent effigy was a way for ancient people to engage with the most powerful forces they knew. By building these mounds, They weren't just creating landmarks. They were shaping their world, embedding their beliefs into the very earth, and creating sacred spaces that would endure for millennia. They were in constant dialogue with the spirits of the land, the sky, and especially the water. These serpents of earth are a timeless reminder of the power of water to shape not just the land, but human spirituality itself. Za, Winding, Gribas, and the serpentine mounds above are two parts of the same sacred story. A story of life, power, and the eternal flow of the cosmos. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of the Serpent Mounds. The stories held within these ancient earthworks are as deep and winding as the rivers they overlook. If you found this fascinating, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. Until next time, keep exploring. Welcome back to our journey into the past. Today, in Chapter 10, we're re-exploring one of the most fundamental questions about the ancient earthworks. How were these colossal structures actually built? The answer is both simple and profoundly complex. It all started with a single basket of earth. Imagine standing at the base of a massive effigy mound, like the Great Serpent Mound, which stretches for over a quarter of a mile. It's easy to feel dwarfed by its scale, to wonder what incredible technology was used to create it. But the truth is, the tools were basic. Woven baskets, probably made from river cane or reeds, and digging tools crafted from stone, wood, or animal shoulder blades. The real power behind these creations wasn't advanced machinery, but human cooperation on an epic scale. The process began with a vision. These mounds weren't random piles of dirt. They were meticulously planned, often with deep ceremonial and astronomical significance. We believe community leaders, shamans, or elders would first lay out the design on the ground. They might have used stakes and ropes to trace the intricate outlines of an animal, a geometric shape, or a celestial alignment. This initial blueprint was the sacred geometry upon which a monument would rise. Once the design was set, the real work began. Picture hundreds, perhaps even thousands, of people gathered for this monumental task. It was a communal effort, a shared purpose that brought together different families, clans, or even entire villages. Each person had a role. Some would dig the earth from designated borrow pits, carefully chosen areas nearby. They would loosen the soil and fill basket after basket. Then, a human chain would form. People would pass the heavy baskets, each weighing up to 50 or 60 pounds, from hand to hand, moving the earth from the pit to the construction site. It was a rhythmic, continuous flow of labor. As each basket arrived, its contents were carefully dumped and spread onto the designated outline, layer by painstaking layer. This wasn't just mindless toil. It was a highly organized process. Different types of soil were used for specific purposes. They might start with a base layer of dark, rich topsoil, followed by layers of clay for stability, and then perhaps a final capping of lighter-colored sand or gravel to prevent erosion and create a distinct visual effect. Archaeologists have uncovered this careful stratigraphy. These soils of significance, which tell a story of intentional design. It's like a layer cake of earth, where each layer was placed with purpose. Think about the sheer logistics. To build even a moderately sized mound, it would have taken tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of basket loads. For the largest structures, like Monk's Mound at Cahokia, we're talking about millions of baskets, representing an estimated 22 million cubic feet of earth moved by human hands alone. This process couldn't have happened overnight. The construction of a single large mound was likely a seasonal activity, undertaken over many months, or even years. People would gather during periods when agricultural work was less demanding, perhaps in the late fall after the harvest, or in early spring. These construction phases were likely major social and ceremonial events in themselves. Imagine the atmosphere. It wasn't silent, arduous labor. It was probably filled with chants, songs, and drumming, turning the work into a collective ritual. Feasting would have been a central part of it. Providing food for such a large workforce was a massive undertaking and a demonstration of the leadership's power and ability to command resources. Archaeological evidence of large hearths and animal bones near construction sites supports this idea of communal feasting. The work was also spiritual. Each basket of earth wasn't just dirt. It was a contribution, an offering. By participating, individuals were connecting with their community, their ancestors, and the cosmos. They were physically building their worldview into the landscape, creating a sacred space that would endure for generations. The act of building was as important as the finished monument. Consider the precision required. For effigy mounds, capturing the subtle curves of a bear's back or the graceful sweep of a bird's wing required constant oversight. The master planners would have been on-site, directing the placement of earth, ensuring the form took shape as intended. They had to maintain the symmetry and proportions of the design as it grew vertically, which is an incredible feat of three-dimensional visualization without modern surveying equipment. The completion of a mound was likely marked by a significant ceremony. It was the culmination of a massive communal effort, a moment of celebration and dedication. The structure was now a permanent part of their world. A giant, built by giants not of stature, but of spirit and cooperation. So when we look at these ancient earthworks, we shouldn't just see mounds of dirt. We should see the echoes of countless footsteps, the rhythm of past baskets, and the unified energy of a community working together. They are monuments to human organization, perseverance, and a deep spiritual connection to the land. They were built one basket at a time, but together they moved mountains. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the construction of these incredible structures. If you found this fascinating, please like this video and subscribe for more chapters in our exploration of this lost world. See you next time. Have you ever stood in front of an ancient monument, like a massive earthen mound, and felt a sense of awe mixed with confusion? You can walk around it, touch its grassy slopes, and feel its immense scale. But from the ground, you can't quite grasp the full picture. It's like looking at a single brushstroke of a giant painting. You know it's part of something bigger, something magnificent, but the complete image remains a mystery. This is the puzzle of many ancient earthworks found across the world, from the Americas to Europe. From our human-level perspective, they often appear as just simple hills or ridges, blending into the natural landscape. But what if we've been looking at them from the wrong angle all this time? What if the key to understanding their true purpose and genius isn't on the ground at all, but high above? Welcome to our exploration of ancient earthworks. As a form of landscape art, a monumental, creative expression designed for a perspective we rarely consider. The view from above. Today, we're going to elevate our viewpoint and uncover how these ancient structures transform from simple mounds into breathtaking art when seen from the sky. It's a perspective that suggests their builders had a profound, almost modern understanding of geography, geometry, and artistry, crafting messages and images on a scale that defies our expectations of ancient technology and knowledge. This isn't just about building big, it's about thinking big in 3 dimensions, across vast landscapes. Let's start with one of the most iconic examples. The Serpent Mound in Ohio, USA. From the ground, you see a long, winding embankment, maybe 3 or 4 feet high. It's impressive, sure, but its true form is hidden. It's only when you climb the nearby observation tower, or better yet, see it from a plane or drone, that the mystery unravels. Suddenly, the winding hill reveals itself as a massive, perfectly formed serpent, over 1,300 feet long, appearing to uncoil and swallow a large oval shape, often interpreted as an egg or the sun. The detail is stunning. The curves are deliberate and graceful. This wasn't an accident. It was a masterpiece of landscape engineering. The builders, likely from the Adena or Ford ancient cultures, didn't have drones or airplanes. So how did they achieve such precision on this enormous scale? How did they know what it would look like from above? This question is the heart of the mystery. The creators of Serpent Mound and countless other earthworks, known as geoglyphs, had to have a way of conceptualizing and executing their designs from a bird's-eye view. One theory is that they used small-scale models, perhaps drawn in sand or sculpted from clay, to plan the layout. Then, using ropes, stakes, and simple geometric principles, they could scale up their model onto the land itself. It would have required meticulous planning, teamwork, and an incredible ability to visualize the final product without ever seeing it in its entirety from the intended vantage point. It's a testament to the human mind's power of abstraction and spatial reasoning. But the genius of these ancient landscape artists goes beyond just creating a shape. It's about where they place their art. These earthworks aren't scattered randomly. They are intentionally integrated into the natural topography. Think of it like a painter choosing the perfect canvas. The Serpent Mound, for example, sits dramatically on a high plateau overlooking the confluence of 3 streams. The ridge itself adds to the drama, giving the serpent a sense of motion and life as it snakes along the natural crest of the land. It's not just a sculpture placed on the land. It's a sculpture made with the land. The hills, valleys, and waterways are all part of the composition. This deliberate placement is a common thread we see worldwide. In the Nazca Desert of Peru, hundreds of gigantic figures of hummingbird, a monkey, a spider are etched into the arid plains. These lines are best, and in some cases only, visible from the air. They are situated on a vast, flat plateau, a natural canvas that stretches for miles. The creators chose this specific location because its unique climate and geology would preserve their delicate line drawings for millennia. Similarly, many of the great mound complexes in North America, like Cahokia and Illinois, were built in fertile river valleys. These locations were not only practical for supporting a large population, but also symbolically significant, positioned at the heart of their world, where water, earth, and sky meet. Let's consider the Hopewell culture of Ohio. They built massive geometric earthworks, perfect circles, squares, and octagons, often connected by broad, parallel walls forming sacred roadways. One of the most astounding is the Newark earthworks. From the ground, you'd walk between enormous earthen walls, some up to 12 feet high, but you'd have no idea you were inside a nearly perfect circle connected to an octagon. But from above, the geometric precision is breathtaking. These shapes are not just random. Many are aligned with astronomical events, like the rising and setting of the sun and moon at specific times of the year. The octagon, for instance, aligns perfectly with the northernmost rising of the moon in its 18.6-year cycle. So, these sites were more than just art. They were celestial observatories, calendars, and ceremonial centers. The landscape itself became a tool to connect with the cosmos. The builders chose scenic overlooks, ridge tops, and river junctions because these were powerful places. They were liminal spaces, thresholds between the earthly and the spiritual realms. By placing their art in these locations, they were sanctifying the entire landscape, transforming it into a sacred canvas that mirrored the heavens. The view from above wasn't just for human eyes. Many researchers believe these massive figures were created as messages or offerings to sky deities or spirits of the ancestors who would be looking down from above. The earthwork was a direct line of communication, and prayer rendered in earth and stone. Imagine the procession of people walking along the sacred avenues at Newark, their path defined by the earthen walls. They are inside the art, participating in the ceremony. But the full meaning, the cosmic alignment, is only understood when you comprehend the overhead view. The builders understood this duality. They created an experience for the participants on the ground and a symbol for the powers in the sky. This speaks to a sophisticated worldview, one that seamlessly blended science, art, and spirituality. They weren't just building mounds. They were shaping their entire world to reflect their understanding of the universe. As we use modern technology like satellite imagery and LiDAR, which can digitally remove trees to reveal the ground beneath, we are rediscovering countless lost earth. We are seeing, for the first time in centuries, the intricate tapestry of mounds, enclosures, and avenues that our ancestors wove into the landscape. We're seeing how they connected sacred sites across dozens, even hundreds of miles, using rivers and ridges as natural corridors. What emerges is a picture of entire regions sculpted into a cohesive ceremonial landscape. It's a form of art so vast it can only be appreciated from the heavens. So, the next time you see a picture of an ancient mound or geoglyph, try to shift your perspective. Don't just see a hill or a ditch. Imagine the planners with their models, the workers with their baskets of earth, all working together to execute a grand vision. See the art not just as an object on the land, but as an integral part of the land itself. The ridges, the valleys, the rivers, the sky. These ancient builders were true masters of landscape art. They saw the world from a perspective we are only now beginning to appreciate, reminding us that sometimes, to truly understand our past, we need to get a view from above. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more explorations into our amazing world. Hello again, and welcome back. Settle in, get comfortable, and let your mind drift as we continue our journey into the past. Tonight, in Chapter 12, we explore the quiet rhythms of community life around the Great Mounds. Let's leave behind the monumental structures for a moment, and instead, picture the people themselves, their daily routines, and the peaceful world they inhabited. Imagine the gentle shift of the seasons, each one bringing a new tempo to their lives. In the warmth of spring and summer, the communities would disperse from their more permanent winter villages. They would set up seasonal camps along winding rivers and within lush, green valleys. These were not grand cities, but intimate collections of simple, sturdy homes made from bent saplings and woven mats. The air would be filled with the sounds of life, the murmur of conversation, the laughter of children playing by the water's edge, and the gentle thud of stone against wood. Life was deeply connected to the land and the water. The rivers were their highways, and the forests their larder. A group might spend weeks in a particular spot, gathering the bounty that nature provided. Women would wade into the shallow marshes, collecting catile roots and arrowhead tubers. They moved with a practiced grace, their hands knowing exactly where to look. They gathered wild berries, sweet and bursting with flavor, and collected nuts like hickory and black walnut, which would be stored for the leaner months ahead. The men would hunt in the deep woods, tracking deer with quiet patience, their movements as silent as the forest itself. They knew the animal trails, the watering holes, the subtle signs that spoke of a creature's presence. They also fished the abundant rivers, using nets woven from plant fibers and hooks carved from bone. They would build weirs, simple but ingenious fish traps made of stone or wood, guiding the fish into a place where they could be easily caught. There was no rush, no frantic pace. It was a life of observation and response, of understanding the patterns of the natural world and living within them. As they moved through their seasonal territories, they weren't entirely isolated. Imagine well-worn footpaths crisscrossing the landscape, connecting different communities. These were the arteries of trade and social connection. A group camped by a river might encounter another family, stopping to share news, stories, and goods. Someone might have a surplus of high-quality flint from a quarry many miles away, perfect for making sharp new spear points or knives. They might trade this for beautifully crafted pottery, decorated with intricate patterns pressed into the wet clay before it was fired. These trade networks were vast and ancient. Shells from the distant Gulf Coast might find their way up the river valleys, passed from hand to hand, eventually becoming a treasured ornament for someone who had never seen the ocean. Copper from the Great Lakes region, hammered into thin, gleaming sheets and shaped into delicate earrings or breastplates, was another prized material. This exchange of goods was also an exchange of ideas, of culture. It was how styles of pottery spread, how new techniques for tool-making were shared, and how bonds between different groups were It was a quiet, slow-moving commerce, built on trust and reciprocity over generations. Think of the tools they used, each one a testament to their ingenuity and skill. An axe head, painstakingly ground from a hard piece of granite, was a tool of immense value. It could fell trees for firewood or for building a canoe. Flint knappers, masters of their craft, could take a rough stone and, with a series of precise, controlled strikes, produce a perfectly formed arrowhead. The ground would be littered with the sharp flakes left behind from their work, a sign of a busy and productive camp. Pottery was an essential part of daily life. The women were the masters of this craft. They would dig the clay from special pits, knead it with water and crush shells or sand to give it strength, and then patiently coil and smooth it into bowls, jars, and cooking pots. Before feeding, they would decorate the surface. Some pots were simple and utilitarian, while others were works of art, incised with swirling lines, geometric shapes, or impressions from woven fabric. Imagine a pot, still warm from the fire, being filled with a hearty stew of venison and wild roots. its aroma mingling with the smell of wood smoke in the evening air. As the days grew shorter and the air turned crisp, the people would begin their journey back to their winter encampments. These were more substantial settlements, often located in sheltered valleys or on river terraces, protected from the harsh winter winds. Here, they would repair their homes, bundle up their stores of dried foods, nuts, and smoked meats, and prepare for the long, quiet months ahead. Winter was a time for rest and renewal. The frantic activity of summer and autumn gave way to a slower, more introspective pace. The world outside might be covered in a blanket of snow, silencing the landscape. But inside their warm lodges, life continued. This was the time for storytelling. Elders would pass down the histories of their people, the tales of their ancestors, and the great myths that explained the world around them. Children would listen, wide-eyed, absorbing the wisdom of generations. It was a time for crafting and mending. Men would repair their hunting gear, straightening arrow shafts by the fire and sharpening their stone points. Women would weave new baskets and mats, their fingers moving with a familiar, rhythmic motion. They might sew new clothing from tanned deer hides, using bone awls to punch holes in sinew for thread. There was a sense of community, of togetherness, as families gathered in the flickering firelight, sharing warmth and companionship through the cold nights. This was the quiet pulse of life that sustained the mound-building cultures. It was a life of profound connection to the earth, to the seasons, to each other. It was peaceful, ordered, and deeply meaningful. While we stand in awe of the great mounds they left behind, it is in these simple, everyday moments that we can truly feel the spirit of the people who built them. A quiet camp by a river, a shared meal around a fire, a story told on a long winter's night. This was their world. As you drift off to sleep, hold on to this image of a peaceful, unhurried life. A life lived in harmony with the world around it. Thank you for joining me on this journey tonight. Follow along for more stories, and may your rest be deep and untroubled. Good night. Welcome back to our journey into the ancient past. Today, in Chapter 13, we approach a topic with deep reverence: the sacred purpose of the great mounds. These weren't just hills of earth. They were the spiritual centers of entire communities, places where heaven and earth met. Let's explore the ceremonies, burials, and rites that consecrated this ground. Imagine standing at the base of a towering earthwork, not as a tourist, but as a member of the community that built it. You would feel a profound connection, a sense of belonging to something much larger than yourself. These mounds were constructed over generations, each basket full of earth a prayer, an act of devotion. They were living monuments, infused with the collective energy and spirit of the people. Many mounds served as the final resting places for revered individuals. These weren't simple graves. The burials were often elaborate, reflecting the person's status and the community's love for them. Archaeologists have found tombs lined with logs, mica, or shells, creating a sacred space for the spirit's journey into the afterlife. The deceased were often laid to rest with items of great significance: beautifully crafted pottery, personal adornments, or tools they used in life. These weren't just possessions. They were extensions of the person, meant to accompany them on their next journey. Think of the famous Serpent Mound in Ohio. It contains no burials. Its purpose was purely ceremonial, a massive effigy aligned with the solstices and other celestial events. Imagine the community gathering there, watching as the sun set on the longest day of the year, its last rays perfectly aligning with the serpent's head. These moments weren't just about telling time. They were about affirming their place in the cosmos, renewing their connection to the cycles of nature and the spirit world. These were powerful, unifying events that reinforced their entire worldview. But not all mounds were so monumental. Many were smaller, more intimate platforms for specific rituals. On top of these flat-topped mounds, temples or chieftains' houses would have stood, built of wood and thatch. These were the stages for the community's spiritual life. Here, sacred fires were kept burning, symbolizing the enduring spirit of the people. The smoke rising from these fires was a conduit, carrying prayers and messages up to the creators. Fire itself was a central element in many ceremonies. Archaeologists often find large, circular fire pits at mound sites. These weren't just for warmth or cooking. They were 4 sacred fires, around which people would gather for rituals, storytelling, and dance. The act of tending the fire, of watching the flames, was a meditative practice, a way to connect with the transformative power of this sacred element. Sometimes, objects were intentionally burned as offerings, their physical form consumed and their essence released to the spirit world. Offerings were a key part of the relationship between the people and the land. They were gifts of gratitude and respect. These could be anything from a handful of tobacco, a precious mineral like galena or mica, to meticulously crafted objects. These items were often placed in sacred spots on or near the mounds, sometimes buried in caches, as a collective gift from the community. It was a way of giving back to the earth that sustained them, a recognition that everything they had came from the generosity of the natural and spiritual worlds. This wasn't a transaction. It was a relationship built on reciprocity and deep respect. Picture a large gathering at the base of a mound. The air is thick, with the smell of wood smoke and roasting corn. The rhythmic beat of a drum echoes across the plaza, the heart of the community. People have traveled from miles around, from surrounding villages, to be here. This is more than a festival. It is a reaffirmation of their identity. They share food, trade goods, arrange marriages, and participate in ceremonies together. The mounds were the anchor, the central point that drew everyone together, strengthening social bonds and renewing their collective spirit. The plazas in front of the mounds were the theaters for this vibrant social and ceremonial life. The spiritual significance of these places extended beyond the mounds themselves. The entire landscape was sacred. The rivers were the lifelines, the forests were the providers, and the animals were respected as kindred spirits. The mounds were simply the most visible expressions of a worldview that saw the sacred in everything. The people who built them didn't see a separation between the physical and the spiritual. The world was alive with spirit, and their ceremonies and rites were how they honored and communicated with that spirit. When we look at these mounds today, it's crucial to see them through this lens of reverence. They are not just archaeological sites. They are cemeteries, temples, and places of immense spiritual power. They are the legacy of a people who had a deep, sophisticated understanding of their world and their place within it. The soft curves of the earthworks reflected gentle and respectful relationship with the land, a stark contrast to the sharp angles of modern construction. They worked with the land, not against it, shaping it to honor the spirits and bring their community together. This worldview, this sacred purpose, is the heart of the mound-building cultures. It's a story of connection, community, and cosmology. Written in earth and sky, it's a reminder that for thousands of years, people on this continent lived in a way that was deeply integrated with the spiritual forces of the natural world. These mounds are their cathedrals, their monuments to a sacred way of life. Thank you for joining me on this reflective journey into the sacred purpose of the mounds. These places hold stories and spirits that deserve our utmost respect. If you found this chapter meaningful, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more explorations into our shared past. We'll see you next time. Welcome back to our journey through America's most sacred landscapes. Today, in Chapter 14, we're re-exploring a place where the earth itself tells a story. Effigy Mounds National Monument in northeastern Iowa, nestled along the majestic bluffs of the upper Mississippi River. This is more than just a park. It's a cultural landscape, a 1,000-year-old testament to the people who shaped this land. Imagine walking through a dense, quiet forest. Sunlight filters through a canopy of oak, hickory, and maple trees. The air is fresh, filled with the scent of damp earth, and the distant call of a bald eagle. Your path, a well-trodden trail, winds up the steep bluffs. With every step, you're not just hiking, you're walking through history. As you ascend, the forest floor seems to rise and fall in gentle, deliberate swells. These aren't natural hills. These are the Effigy Mounds. Beneath the carpet of leaves and forest growth lie over 200 mounds, built by ancestral Native American cultures more than 1,000 years ago. Many are simple, conical or linear shapes, likely burial sites or ceremonial markers. But what makes this place truly unique, truly breathtaking, are the effigy mounds themselves. Mounds sculpted in the shapes of animals. As you reach the top of the bluff, the trees part, revealing a stunning panoramic view of the Mississippi River Valley below. The wide, slow-moving river snakes through a patchwork of islands and wetlands, a timeless superhighway of nature and commerce. From this vantage point, you can truly appreciate the scale of this place. Now, turn your gaze back to the ground you're standing on. Let's try to see what the builders saw, what they intended for us to feel. Imagine the forest canopy peeled back, like lifting a blanket. Suddenly, the subtle rises in the earth resolve into clear, undeniable shapes. There, just off the trail, is a massive bear. Its form is unmistakable, a powerful body, for sturdy legs, a defined head. It stretches over 100 feet long, a silent, earthen guardian watching over the valley. Walk a little further, and you might find a line of smaller bears, a family procession frozen in time. These aren't just random shapes, each one held deep meaning. The bear, a creature of immense power and a provider of food and resources, was a central figure in the spiritual world of these ancient peoples. Building its likeness into the earth was an act of reverence, a way to connect with the spirit world, a permanent prayer etched into the landscape. Now, let your mind's eye drift across the bluff top. The shapes change. You might see a long, serpentine mound, its form mimicking the river below. Or perhaps you'll spot a bird effigy, its wings spread wide as if in mid-flight, soaring high above the river bluffs, just like the eagles that circle here today. Can you see it? The distinct shape of a falcon or an eagle, its wings spanning 200 feet, its head pointing towards the sunrise. These bird mounds are among the most spectacular. They connect the earth to the sky, symbolizing a link between the terrestrial world and the celestial one. The people who built these mounds chose this specific location for a reason. This confluence of river, bluff, and forest was a sacred space. The act of moving thousands of baskets of earth, handful by handful, to create these monumental animal figures was a profound community effort, likely spanning generations. They were creating a ceremonial center, a place to honor their dead, to mark celestial events, and to reaffirm their connection to the spirits of the natural world that sustained them. As you walk the trails of the North Unit, you'll encounter the Great Bear Mound Group, one of the most impressive collections. 10 bear mounds are arranged in a line, accompanied by bird mounds and linear earthworks. Imagine the ceremonies that took place here. The rhythmic beat of drums, the flicker of firelight against the earthen walls of the animal shapes, the voices of a community joined in ritual. They weren't just building mounds. They were building a relationship with their world. Now, let's cross over to the South Unit. Here, the landscape feels even more intimate. The trail leads you to the Marching Bear Group, a procession of 10 bear mounds and 3 bird mounds. They seem to be walking, one after another, along the ridge. The sense of movement is palpable. You can almost feel the deliberate, powerful stride of these earthen bears. It's like a story unfolding as you walk, a narrative written in soil and grass. Why are they marching? Where are they going? The exact answers are lost to time, but the feeling of purpose, of a sacred journey, is undeniable. One of the most remarkable things about effigy mounds is how the shapes are often best understood not from the ground, but from above. This has led many to wonder if the builders intended them to be seen by sky spirits, or perhaps they had a sophisticated understanding of perspective that allowed them to visualize these giant forms from the ground as they were being built. Standing at it, you realize you're in an outdoor cathedral. The mounds are the sculptures, the trees are the pillars, and the sky is the vaulted ceiling. Even the simple conical and linear mounds hold profound significance. Most are burial mounds, the final resting places for honored individuals. When archaeologists carefully studied some of these mounds in the past, they found that they contained the remains of people laid to rest with great care. These mounds connect the living to their ancestors, anchoring the community to its past and its land. As the sun begins to set, casting long shadows across the mounds, the forest grows quieter. The shapes on the forest floor seem to sink back into the earth, their outlines softening in the fading light. But they are still here, holding their form, preserving the stories and beliefs of a people who lived in harmony with this river valley a millennium ago. Visiting Effigy Mounds National Monument is a humbling experience. It reminds us that the history of this continent is written not just in books, but in the land itself. It encourages us to look closer, to see beyond the surface, and to listen to the quiet stories the earth has to tell. These mounds are a fragile, irreplaceable link to America's ancient past. They are a cultural landscape that deserves our deepest respect and protection. So next time you're near the great Mississippi, take a detour and walk among these silent, powerful guardians. See if you can see the bears marching and the birds taking flight beneath the trees. Thanks for joining me on this chapter of our exploration. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure. Until then, keep exploring. Welcome back to our journey through the ancient landscapes of North America. So far, we've explored some incredible effigy mounds, but today, we're broadening our horizons. While Iowa holds some spectacular examples, the effigy mound tradition was a vast cultural phenomenon that stretched across the entire upper Midwest. Let's travel north, into the heartland of this ancient practice. Wisconsin. Wisconsin is truly the epicenter of effigy mound building. Thousands of these earthen sculptures once dotted the landscape, clustered in groups along lake shores, river valleys, and hilltops. The sheer density and variety here are astounding. We see familiar shapes, like birds and bears, but also new ones. The panther, or water spirit, is a particularly common and powerful motif in Wisconsin. These are long-tailed, four-legged creatures, often depicted in dynamic poses, as if prowling the earth. One of the most famous sites is the Lizard Mound County Park, where you can walk among a beautifully preserved group of mounds, including a striking lizard or panther figure. Another iconic location is the Man Mound Park, home to the only surviving human or anthropomorphic effigy mound in the world. Originally over 200 feet long, this colossal figure gives us a rare glimpse into how these ancient people viewed themselves. The builders in Wisconsin, often referred to as the late Woodland effigy mound culture, flourished from about 700 to 1200 AD. Their mounds weren't just isolated sculptures, they were part of larger ceremonial complexes. These mound groups often included conical and linear mounds alongside the effigies, creating intricate arrangements that likely held deep cosmological significance. Imagine standing in one of these sacred spaces 1,000 years ago, surrounded by dozens of massive earthworks representing the spirits of the air, water, and land. The scale of this activity in Wisconsin suggests a highly organized and deeply spiritual society, with shared beliefs and rituals that connected communities across hundreds of miles. Now, let's head south from Wisconsin into Illinois. While Illinois is more famous for the massive platform mounds of Cahokia, the effigy mound builders left their mark here too. The northern part of the state, particularly along the Rock River and its tributaries, was part of this cultural sphere. The mounds in Illinois often share stylistic similarities with those in southern Wisconsin, featuring familiar animal shapes. However, their distribution is less dense, suggesting that northern Illinois might have been on the southern frontier of this tradition. One of the most significant sites was the Mills Group, located near the confluence of the Rock and Kishwaukee rivers. Though much of it has been lost to agriculture and development, historical surveys documented a fascinating collection of mounds, including turtles, birds, and long-tailed quadrupeds. This shows that the same symbolic vocabulary was being used across this wide region. The presence of these mounds in Illinois highlights the interconnectedness of the people of the Midwest. They weren't living in isolation. Instead, they were part of a vibrant network of trade, communication, and shared cultural practices that spanned across modern state lines. This brings us to a crucial point. The effigy mound builders were not one single, monolithic tribe. They were a network of related but distinct communities, all participating in a shared tradition. Think of it like a common language with regional dialects. A bear mound in Iowa might look slightly different from one in Wisconsin, perhaps with a different posture or level of detail. But the fundamental idea and symbolism remained recognizable across the entire area. Archaeologists see these subtle variations in mound styles as clues to local identities and beliefs. For example, the prevalence of water spirits like panthers and turtles in Wisconsin, as lake-rich regions, might reflect a deep spiritual connection to the abundant waterways. In contrast, the bird effigies, often depicted with outstretched wings, as if soaring, could represent sky spirits or celestial beings, a theme that resonates across the entire mound-building region. Let's zoom out even further and look at the bigger picture. The Effigy Mound region, centered in Wisconsin and extending into Iowa, Illinois, and Minnesota, formed a unique cultural island. To the south, the Mississippian culture was building massive cities like Cahokia, with a completely different social structure and ceremonial focus. To the east and west, other woodland cultures had their own distinct traditions. Yet, for several hundred years, the effigy mound builders maintained their unique, artistic, and spiritual expression, creating a landscape alive with meaning. Why did they build these mounds? This remains one of the great questions. We know many mounds contained burials, suggesting they were monuments for ancestors and important community members. The effigy shapes themselves likely represent clan or lineage symbols, connecting families to specific spirit animals. A bear clan might build bear mounds as a way of marking their territory and honoring their ancestral totem. These mounds were not just graves. They were territorial markers, ceremonial centers, and physical manifestations of a community's identity and their relationship with the cosmos. These earthen sculptures were also built to last. By shaping the very earth, these people created permanent symbols of their beliefs that would endure for generations. They were a way of writing their stories and their social map directly onto the land. When we walk among these mounds today, we are reading a sacred text composed of earth. A text that tells of a world where the boundaries between humans, animals, and spirits were fluid and interconnected. The decline of the effigy mound tradition around 1200 AD is as mysterious as its beginning. It seems to have faded as new cultural influences, like those from the Mississippian world, began to spread. Lifestyles changed, and the focus of ceremony and social life shifted, but the mounds themselves remained silent witnesses to a forgotten way of life. From the panthers of Wisconsin to the birds of Illinois and the bears of Iowa, the effigy mounds of the Midwest represent a remarkable chapter in human history. They reveal a world where art, religion, and daily life were inseparable, and where people had a profound connection to the landscape and the spirits that inhabited it. Preserving these sacred sites is our responsibility, as they offer an irreplaceable window into the rich and complex tapestry of America's ancient past. Thanks for joining us on this expanded tour of the Effigy Mound heartland. It's truly amazing to see how these traditions connected people across such a vast area. If you enjoyed this journey, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more explorations into our ancient world. We'll see you in the next chapter. Welcome back to our channel, where today we're diving deep into a story that's part history, part mystery. We're exploring the ancient mounds, those silent earthen structures that dot landscapes across the world, and asking, what do we really know about them, and what secrets do they still hold? Let's get our virtual trowels ready and dig in. For centuries, these mounds were just enigmatic bumps on the horizon, but modern archaeology has given us a powerful toolkit to peel back the layers of time. It all starts with excavation. This isn't just random digging. It's a meticulous, surgical process. Archaeologists work in carefully marked out grids, painstakingly removing soil layer by layer, sometimes with tools as delicate as a paintbrush. Every artifact, every soil discoloration, every fragment of bone is a clue. They document the exact location of each find, creating a three-dimensional map of the past. This process, called stratigraphy, is based on a simple principle. The deeper you dig, the further back in time you go. But how do we put a precise date on what we find? That's where one of the most revolutionary tools in archaeology comes in: radiocarbon dating. Here's how it works. In a nutshell, all living things, from the tiniest plant to the largest animal, absorb carbon from the atmosphere. A tiny fraction of this is a radioactive isotope called carbon-14. When an organism dies, it stops taking in new carbon, and the carbon-14 it has already accumulated begins to decay at a very predictable rate. By measuring the amount of carbon-14 left in an organic sample like a piece of charcoal from an ancient fire pit or a human, bone scientists can calculate how long ago that organism died. This technique has been a game changer, allowing us to build reliable timelines for mound-building cultures that had no written records. It's how we know, for example, that some mounds in North America are over 5,000 years old, predating the pyramids of Giza. But digging things up is destructive by nature. Once a site is excavated, it's gone forever. So, archaeologists are increasingly turning to non-invasive methods to see what's beneath the surface without ever lifting a shovel. It's like giving the earth an MRI. Tools like ground-penetrating radar, or GPR, send radio waves into the soil. These waves bounce back differently depending on what they hit, creating a map of buried walls, pits, tombs, and even individual post holes. Another technique is magnetometry, which measures tiny variations in the Earth's magnetic field caused by features like burned hearths or ditches. And then there's LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging. Flown from a plane or a drone, LiDAR shoots millions of laser pulses at the ground, creating an incredibly detailed topographical map that can reveal subtle earthworks, completely hidden by forest canopies. These technologies have been revolutionary, helping us discover entire forgotten cities and understand the true scale and complexity of mound sites. Thanks to these incredible tools, we've learned a ton. We know that these mounds were not just random piles of dirt. They were sophisticated engineering projects, often serving as ceremonial centers, burial grounds for the elite, and even defensive structures. We've uncovered stunning artifacts, intricate pottery, tools made from exotic materials sourced hundreds of miles away, and beautiful ornaments that speak to a rich cultural and spiritual life. Radiocarbon dating has shown us that different cultures built mounds at different times, from the hunter-gatherers of the Archaic period to the complex agricultural societies of the Mississippian era who built Cahokia, a city of mounds that was once larger than London. We've learned that these were isolated communities, but were connected by vast trade networks that crisscrossed continents. And yet, for all that we've uncovered, the mounds guard their deepest secrets jealously. The what and when are getting clearer, but the why remains shrouded in mystery. Take the famous Effigy Mounds of the American Midwest, shaped like bears, birds, serpents, and even humans. We can map them, date them, and analyze the soil they're made from. But why these specific animals? Were they clan symbols, marking territory? Were they spirit guides, meant to be seen from the heavens? Did the shape of the bear mound invoke a spirit of strength, or the serpent a connection to the underworld? The builders left no user manual. Their beliefs and intentions were encoded in the symbolic language of earth and sky that we are still struggling to decipher. Another huge puzzle is the social structure of the people who built them. Constructing a massive earthwork like the Great Serpent Mound in Ohio or the city of Cahokia would have required immense coordination. It means there was a society complex enough to organize, feed, and direct a large labor force over a long period. But what did that society look like? Was there a powerful king or a priestly class directing the work? Was it a more communal effort, driven by shared faith? The mounds themselves are largely silent on the politics of their creation. We find elite burials with lavish grave goods, suggesting a hierarchical society. But the exact nature of their leadership and social organization remains a topic of intense debate. We see the result of their collective effort, but the social blueprint is missing. Perhaps one of the most tantalizing mysteries is the connection to the cosmos. Many mounds and mound complexes are not randomly placed. They show a sophisticated understanding of astronomy. Major earthworks are precisely aligned to the movements of the sun and moon, marking important events like the solstices and equinoxes. At Cahokia, a series of large wooden posts, nicknamed Woodhenge by archaeologists, formed a solar calendar. These alignments suggest the mounds were part of a complex ceremonial calendar, tying human life on Earth to the cycles of the heavens. Were these celestial observatories? Sacred calendars? Stages for cosmic rituals? Understanding these astronomical connections is key, but the full meaning behind them, the stories they told about the universe and humanity's place in it, is a story we can only guess at. So, where does that leave us? We stand with one foot in the world of hard science, of carbon dates, soil analysis and laser scans, and the other in a world of profound mystery. The mounds are a powerful reminder that the past is not just a collection of facts and artifacts. It's a tapestry of human belief, ingenuity, and spirit. Every tool we develop brings us closer, but it also reveals new questions, new layers of complexity. These ancient landscapes are not dead history. They are living puzzles. They challenge us to keep digging, to keep questioning, and to listen carefully to the silent stories written in the earth. The quest to understand them is far from over. Thank you so much for joining me on this archaeological adventure today. If you enjoyed this journey into the mysteries of the past, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history and science. And let me know in the comments which ancient mystery you'd like us to explore next. Until then, stay curious. Welcome back to our journey through history. Today, we turn to a chapter that isn't just about the past, but is very much alive in the present. We are honored to listen to the voices of the descendant tribes of the Ho-Chunk, the Iowa tribe of Kansas and Nebraska, the Dakota, and the Ojibwe. These nations have deep, ancestral connections to the lands we've been discussing, and their perspectives are essential to understanding the true meaning of these sacred places. This isn't just history. It's a living heritage. For these contemporary native nations, the mounds and earthworks are not relics. They are sacred sites, places of ceremony, and the final resting places of ancestors. Protecting them is a profound spiritual and cultural responsibility. It's about honoring those who came before and preserving a connection for future generations. Let's start by hearing from the Ho-Chunk Nation. The Ho-Chunk, whose history in this region spans millennia, view these sites as an integral part of their identity. Their oral traditions and language are interwoven with the landscape. Published statements from the Ho-Chunk Nation Historic Preservation Office emphasize that these mounds are not just archaeological artifacts. They are family cemeteries. Imagine someone wanting to build a highway through your local cemetery. That's the level of significance we are talking about. Their work focuses on consultation, education, and active preservation, ensuring that their ancestors are respected and that these places remain undisturbed. They see themselves as stewards, carrying on a sacred duty that has been passed down through countless generations. This stewardship is a fundamental part of what it means to be Ho-Chunk. Next, we turn to the Iowa tribe of Kansas and Nebraska. Their ancestors, the Iowa, also have a long and storied history in this region. For them, these places are touchstones to their past, connecting them directly to their ancestors and their traditional ways of life. Statements from their tribal historic preservation officer often highlight the importance of repatriation and the proper care of ancestral remains that may have been disturbed. The Iowa tribe actively works to reclaim and protect their heritage, viewing these earthworks as libraries of their history, written on the land itself. Their efforts are a powerful reminder that history is not just something you read in a book. It is something you live, you feel, and you protect. The connection is deeply personal and spiritual. Now, let's listen to the perspective of the Dakota people. The Dakota Oyat, or Dakota Nation, have ancestral ties to this land that are profound and enduring. For the Dakota, places like these are woven into their origin stories and their spiritual worldview. They are considered waken, or sacred. The land itself is a relative, a living entity that deserves respect. Leaders and elders from Dakota communities have spoken about the pain caused by the desecration of these sites. They advocate for a relationship with the land based on reciprocity and respect, not ownership and extraction. Their view is holistic. Protecting a mound is not just about preserving a physical structure, but about maintaining the spiritual health of the land and the community. It's a philosophy that challenges us to see the world not as a collection of resources, but as a web of relationships. Finally, we consider the views of the Ojibwe, also known as the Enish. With a vast traditional territory, the Ojibwe also have significant connections to these sacred landscapes. Their oral traditions speak of a great migration and of prophecies that are tied to specific places on the land. For the Ojibwe, protecting these sites is about fulfilling their spiritual responsibilities. Tribal historic preservation efforts often focus on working with federal and state agencies to ensure that their voice is heard in land management decisions. They emphasize that consultation with sovereign tribal nations is not just a legal requirement, it is a moral imperative. Their perspective teaches us that these places hold knowledge, stories, and power that are vital for the well-being of their people and, ultimately, for all of us. So, what can we learn from these voices? We learn that these mounds and earthworks are not empty monuments of a lost civilization. They are living, breathing parts of a continuing culture. The Ho-Chunk, the Iowa tribe, the Dakota, and the Ojibwe are not voices from the past. They are sovereign nations with vibrant communities here and now. They are the rightful stewards of these sacred places. Their perspectives call on us to shift our own understanding. Instead of seeing these sites merely as objects of scientific study or tourist attractions, we are invited to see them through a lens of reverence and respect. This means supporting the work of tribal historic preservation offices. It means listening when they speak. It means advocating for policies that prioritize the protection of these sacred sites over development and resource extraction. It's about recognizing that the history of this land did not end. It continues today through the people whose ancestors shaped it. Their fight to protect their heritage is a fight to preserve a crucial part of our shared human story. It's a reminder that true understanding comes not just from digging in the dirt, but from listening to the people to whom this land is, and always has been, home. As we conclude this chapter, let's carry this understanding forward. The next time you see an ancient mound or earthwork, remember the living voices connected to it. Remember the generations of ancestors who rest there and the contemporary nations who continue to honor them. Their stewardship is a gift, offering us a more respectful and sustainable way to relate to the land and its history. Thank you for joining us on this important part of our journey. We hope you'll continue to explore with us. Please consider subscribing to learn more. Thanks for watching. Welcome back to our journey through history. Today, we re-enter in a period that is both crucial and heartbreaking. The era from the 1800s to the early 1900s. This was a time of immense change across the American landscape, and for the ancient mounds that dotted the continent, it was an era of unprecedented destruction. As settlers pushed westward, driven by dreams of new beginnings and fertile land, they encountered these silent, earthen monuments. To many, these mounds weren't sacred sites or historical records. They were simply obstacles. Imagine a farmer looking out over a newly acquired piece of land. In the middle of his field stands a large, conical hill. For him, farming in straight lines is the most efficient way to work. That mound, a testament to a civilization that thrived centuries before, becomes just a lump of earth to be flattened. And so, with plows and shovels, countless mounds were leveled, their contents scattered, their stories erased before they could ever be told. Year after year, season after season, the plows cut deeper, turning up artifacts, human remains, and the very structure of the mounds themselves. It wasn't always born of malice, but of a profound and tragic lack of understanding. The land was seen as something to be tamed and cultivated, and the mounds were part of that untamed wilderness. This agricultural expansion was just one part of the story. The 19th century was also the age of the mound builder myth. Many people at the time simply could unbelieve that the ancestors of the Native Americans they saw were capable of such monumental architecture. Instead, they invented stories of a lost race of giants, or Vikings, or wandering Egyptians who had built the mounds and then vanished. This myth fueled a frenzy of curiosity and treasure hunting. People saw the mounds not as archaeological sites, but as treasure chests waiting to be opened. Armchair archaeologists, amateur collectors, and outright looters descended upon these sites with shovels and picks. They weren't interested in careful excavation or scientific study. They were digging for relics, finely crafted pottery, stone tools, copper ornaments, and anything else they deemed valuable or curious. Accounts from the time describe people digging into mounds for a weekend's entertainment, pulling out skeletons and artifacts to display on their mantelpieces. They created massive, gaping holes in the centers of mounds, destroying the layers of history that professional archaeologists would later learn to read like a book. Each layer, each object's position, held clues about the people who built them. But in this frantic rush for treasure, all of that context was lost forever. The very act of discovery became an act of destruction. Think about the sheer scale of this. In Ohio's Scioto Valley, one of the most densely populated areas of ancient mound-building cultures, early surveyors mapped hundreds of earth. By the end of the 19th century, a vast majority of them were gone or severely damaged. The Great Newark Earthworks, a complex so large you could fit the Great Pyramid of Giza inside its observatory circle, was partially saved, but other parts were turned into a golf course and a fairground. In St. Louis, once known as Mound City, a massive complex of over 24 mounds dominated the riverfront. The largest, a terrace structure bigger than the pyramids of Egypt at its base, was systematically carted away in the 1860s to be used as landfill. An entire ancient city center, erased for urban expansion. As towns and cities grew, the mounds were in the direct path of progress. They were leveled for roads, for housing developments, for factories. The earth that had been carefully carried, basketful by basketful, to create these sacred spaces, was now seen as convenient filled dirt. It's a difficult truth to confront. This wasn't a secret. It was happening in plain sight, often celebrated as a victory of civilization over wilderness. Newspapers would report on the curious objects found as a mound was demolished, but few at the time questioned the demolition itself. This period represents a colossal loss of human heritage. Imagine if we allowed people to dismantle Stonehenge for garden rocks, or use the Roman Colosseum as a quarry for new buildings. That's the scale of what happened to the mound-building cultures of North America. Thousands upon thousands of these structures, each one a potential library of information about the past, were destroyed. With them, we lost not just artifacts, but the unwritten stories of communities, ceremonies, and a deep connection to the land that spanned millennia. It's important to be gentle with this history, but also to be honest. This was an era of destruction, born from a collision of cultures and a fundamental misunderstanding of value. The value of a clear field for a farmer, the value of a curious relic for a collector. The value of flatland for a developer. All of these were seen as greater than the value of preserving a history that was ununderstood or respected. This chapter of our story is a somber one, but it's essential for understanding what came next. The slow, dawning realization of what had been lost, and the birth of the modern movement to protect what little remained. We'll explore that awakening in our next video. Thank you for joining me for this difficult but important part of our shared history. If you're finding this series valuable, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps us continue to tell these stories. We'll see you next time. Welcome back to our journey through the history of the Effigy Mounds. Today, we re-explore the remarkable story of how these sacred sites were saved from destruction and became the national monument we know and cherish. It's a tale of dedicated individuals, shifting attitudes, and the enduring spirit of the indigenous peoples who built them. For centuries, the mounds stood as silent witnesses to the changing landscape. But as American settlers moved westward in the 19th century, these ancient earthworks faced a new and urgent threat. Farmers plowed over them, towns were built on top of them, and treasure hunters dug into them, seeking relics and artifacts. Countless mounds were lost forever, their stories erased from the earth. The very memory of what these places represented was fading, but just as the threat grew, so did a movement to protect them. The first glimmers of preservation came from early surveyors and people like Theodore H. Lewis and Alfred Hill embarked on a massive project in the late 1800s, meticulously surveying and mapping thousands of mounds across the upper Midwest. Their work was a race against time. They created detailed plats and drawings, documenting the shapes of bears, birds, and other figures before they disappeared. This survey, though purely academic at the time, would become an invaluable record, a blueprint for what had been lost and what could still be saved. Around the same time, the state of Wisconsin began to take notice. Increase Lapham, a scientist and conservationist, published The Antiquities of Wisconsin in 1855, a comprehensive study that brought national attention to the mounds. His work helped fuel a growing awareness that these were not just random hills of dirt, but irreplaceable artifacts of a sophisticated ancient culture. Public sentiment started to shift from curiosity and exploitation to a sense of historical responsibility. As the 20th century dawned, the preservation movement gained real momentum. In Iowa, a passionate group of citizens, led by a conservationist named Ellison, began to campaign actively for the protection of the mounds in the northeastern part of the state. A self-taught archaeologist, spent decades excavating, documenting, and advocating. He understood that these weren't just archaeological sites. They were cultural landscapes that told a deep story. He worked tirelessly with the Iowa State Historical Society and other local groups, writing letters, giving lectures, and rallying support to create a state park or a national reserve. Their efforts were part of a larger national conservation movement. With the passage of the Antiquities Act in 1906, President Theodore Roosevelt was given the power to declare national monuments to protect significant historic and scientific sites. This new federal tool gave preservationists a powerful goal to work toward. The dream was no longer just about a local park. It was about securing federal protection that would last for generations. The path to national monument status was long and filled with challenges. It took years of lobbying, fundraising, and navigating political hurdles. A key moment came when the proposed area was recognized for its exceptional concentration and preservation of effigy mounds. Unlike other areas where mounds were scattered or degraded, this stretch along the Mississippi River held a stunning collection of intact, animal-shaped earthworks. Crucially, the advocacy wasn't just coming from non-native preservationists. While their voices were not always recorded in the official histories of the time, Indigenous leaders and communities were consistently asserting the sacredness of these sites. For them, these were not antiquities or relics of a bygone era. They were, and still are, living ceremonial places, burial grounds for their ancestors, and integral parts of their cultural and spiritual identity. Their persistent advocacy, passed down through generations, maintained the spiritual significance of the mounds and laid the groundwork for their eventual protection. The fight was about preserving a connection to their heritage. Finally, after decades of dedicated work from so many different people, the dream became a reality. On October 25, 1949, President Harry S. Truman signed a proclamation establishing Effigy Mounds National Monument. It was a landmark victory for conservation and for the recognition of America's deep indigenous history. The core area donated by the state of Iowa was now under the protection of the National Park Service. The creation of the monument was just the beginning. In the years that followed, the park has expanded, adding more land and protecting more mounds. But more importantly, the way the park is managed has evolved significantly. Early on, the focus was primarily on archaeology and public recreation. Visitors came to hike the trails and marvel at the shapes of the mounds. Today, however, the management of Effigy Mounds National Monument is guided by a much deeper and more collaborative philosophy. The National Park Service now works in close partnership with the monument's affiliated tribal nations. This is a profound shift. Indigenous voices are no longer on the periphery. They are at the center of the conversation. Tribal representatives consult on everything from land management and resource protection to how the story of the mounds is told to the public. This collaborative approach ensures that the monument is managed not just as a historical site, but as a sacred one. Traditional cultural practices are respected, and the perspectives of the descendants of the mound builders are integrated into the park's mission. Modern park management recognizes that preservation isn't just about protecting the physical earthworks. It's about honoring their living cultural and spiritual significance. The park serves as a place of remembrance, education, and respect, bridging the past with the present. So, the next time you visit Effigy Mounds National Monument or see photos of its iconic bear and bird mounds, remember the incredible journey it took to get here. From the early surveyors racing against the plow, to the citizen activists who refused to let this history be erased. And most importantly, to the indigenous peoples who have always known the power and sanctity of this land. The monument stands today as a testament to the power of preservation and the enduring spirit of a place that continues to teach us about our shared heritage. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this story as inspiring as I do, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into our nation's history. We'll see you in the next chapter. As the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fiery orange and deep violet, a profound stillness settles over the land. Here, among the rolling hills and quiet forests of the upper Midwest, lie the sleeping giants. They are not creatures of flesh and bone, but silent storytellers sculpted from the earth itself. These are the Effigy Mounds, a legacy left by a people who lived in harmony with this landscape over 1,000 years ago. Walk with me, softly now, as the last light of day filters through the ancient oaks and hickories. The air grows cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves. Beneath our feet, the ground is soft, a plush carpet of grass covering gentle rises in the terrain. These are not just random hills. They are bears, birds, panthers, and water spirits, their forms still discernible after centuries of sun and rain, wind and snow. Imagine the hands that built them, generations of people, gathering basketful by basketful, shaping the soil with reverence and purpose. Each mound was more than just a burial place. It was a clan symbol, a celestial calendar, a sacred space where the world of the living met the realm of the spirit. They built these figures to face the sunrise, to align with the stars, to mark the changing of the seasons. They were a people deeply connected to the rhythms of the cosmos, and they etched that connection into the very fabric of the earth. As twilight deepens, the world around us transforms. The sharp edges of the day soften, and the forest becomes a place of shadows and secrets. The whisper of the wind through the leaves sounds like an ancient language, a story told in a tongue we no longer speak but can still feel in our souls. These mounds are not empty relics. They are vessels of memory, holding the stories, the beliefs, and the dreams of countless generations. They are a library written in soil and sod, a testament to a rich and complex culture that thrived here long before the first European ships touched these shores. Feel the peace that permeates this place. It's a quiet that goes beyond the absence of noise. It's a deep, resonant tranquility that comes from standing in a place of immense history and spiritual significance. The people who built these mounds are gone. Their villages vanished, their language scattered to the winds, but their spirit endures, held within the embrace of these earthen giants. They remind us that we are all part of a much longer story, a continuous thread of human experience stretching back thousands of years. To walk among these mounds is to walk through time. You are treading on ground that has witnessed countless sunsets, felt the tread of moccasined feet, and heard the songs and prayers of a people intimately connected to their world. It's a humbling experience. It asks us to slow down, to listen, and to see with more than just our eyes. It calls for a deep respect, not just for the physical forms of the mounds, but for the profound cultural and spiritual heritage they represent. These are sacred sites. They are the final resting places of ancestors, the ceremonial centers of communities, the physical manifestation of a worldview that saw the sacred in every part of the natural world. When we beseat, we are guests in their home. We must tread lightly, speak softly, and leave nothing but our footprints and our respect. Vandalism, disrespect, even casual indifference are wounds inflicted not just on the earth, but on the memory of the people who created them and their living descendants, who continue to honor these places. Preserving these mounds is more than just an act of historical conservation. It is an act of cultural respect. It is an acknowledgement that the stories and traditions of the first peoples of this land are a vital part of our collective human heritage. By protecting these sleeping giants, we ensure that their voices are not silenced, that their stories can continue to be told for generations to come. We are safeguarding a connection to a past that can teach us so much about community, spirituality, and our place in the natural world. As darkness finally blankets the landscape, the stars begin to appear, scattered like diamonds on black velvet. They are the same stars that the mound builders watched, the same celestial patterns that guided their ceremonies and shaped their understanding of the universe. The Great Bear in the sky is mirrored by the Great Bear mounds on the earth below, a beautiful symmetry between the heavens and the land. Here, in the profound quiet of the night, it's easy to feel the presence of the past. The mounds seem to breathe with the slow, steady rhythm of the earth. They are not just monuments to the dead. They are living presences, guardians of a timeless wisdom. They teach us about resilience, about the enduring power of culture, and about the deep, sacred connection between humanity and the land. Let the peace of this place seep into your own being. Let the silence of the forest quiet the noise of your mind. As we stand here, under the vast, starry sky, we are reminded of our own small place in the grand sweep of time. We are temporary custodians of this world, and it is our responsibility to honor and protect the legacies that have been left in our care. The Effigy Mounds are more than just archaeological sites. They are a sacred trust. They are a bridge to a past that is still very much alive, a gift from ancestors we never knew. They are sleeping giants, resting peacefully, dreaming their eternal dreams. And in their silent, earthen forms, they hold a message for all of us: to listen to the land, to respect the stories of those who came before, and to walk through this world with a sense of wonder and reverence. As this day comes to a close, and you prepare for your own rest, carry this tranquility with you. Imagine the soft earth beneath the grass, the quiet strength of the ancient trees, and the silent, watchful presence of the mounds. Let the deep peace of this sacred landscape be a balm for your spirit. Allow the stories of the sleeping giants to cradle you as you drift off. The world will be here when you wake, with all its light and sound. But for now, let there be stillness. Let there be quiet. Let there be peace. Thank you for joining me on this journey through time. May your dreams be filled with the quiet wisdom of the earth. Good night, and sleep well.